India and China are two Asian powers with similar populations, geographical features, and cultural values. Two countries are vast and are blessed with an abundance of natural resources to sustain a large population. And several decades back, both had a huge potential for economic growth. In the 1960s, India and China had comparable populations of around 500 million and 650 million respectively. Coming to the economy, the Chinese GDP in the 1960s was around 130 billion US dollars, slightly smaller than the Indian GDP of 150 billion US dollars. Fast forward to 2018, China is the second largest economy in the world after the United States with a GDP of $17.7 trillion, while India stands way below at $3.17 trillion, less than one fifth of China's size. One can wonder what brought about this drastic change, but the core of the reason will be that India and China are not so similar after all. For starters, India is not as big as China. Even though India is the seventh largest country in the world, with its 3.2 million square kilometers of area, it is still only one third the size of China. This gives China a higher scope of expansion in terms of development into its interiors. China opened up its economy to foreign businesses in 1978, and the Chinese Communist Party's strategy was clear: to transform China into a manufacturing hub to drive its economy. The rules were relaxed for foreign investments, and along with the availability of cheap labor and raw materials, China became the favorite spot for investors. In the meantime, liberalization in India came much later, in 1991. From 1978 to 1991, China's economy grew by an average of 8 to 9% every year. And by 1991, China had already overtaken India in terms of GDP. It leveraged its first comer advantage and had a GDP of 383 billion US dollars in 1991, compared to India's 270 billion US dollars. China had played its cards right and was already way ahead of India and was in the driving seat. The fact is that the term liberalization can be taken into account from different lenses. For China, it meant shedding off its socialist past and embracing capitalism. The policies were drafted keeping economic progress in mind, no matter what. But at the same time, they were cautious to keep the country under a one-party authoritarian political system. In a democratic India, most parties had a socialist ideology, which had led to a delay in the liberalization process. With the economy in its downturn and the rupee's rapid devaluation, leaders were left with no choice but to open up the market. But even after the liberalization, the leaders held on to their views, promoting the so called import substitution method, where foreign goods were regulated to promote Indian businesses. This had resulted in the inability of Indian manufacturers to produce export class products. Perhaps the most important factor which has led to this drastic difference in economic growth in India and China must be the political system in the two countries. China has a one party authoritarian government for which opposition from people is not a big deal. If the government wants a project to be carried out, resistance to that will not really matter and it is going to be completed no matter what. On the other hand, India is a vibrant democracy where grievances from all the parties have to be addressed for any project. Opponents of democracy often point out this issue of too much democracy that slows down developmental activities. True development is often pushed back or not carried out as the elected government has to please all the stakeholders. This was one of the major reasons why, at the dawn of the economic growth of India and China, China was able to cruise forward with rapid infrastructure development required for quick movement of produced goods to its ports. In a short span of time, China has developed one of the best and most efficient infrastructure in the world and has even focused on building connectivity networks beyond its borders for the fast movement of its goods. The Belt and Road Initiative is China's flagship program to achieve this, which covers over 147 countries where China has invested more than $70 billion. Meanwhile, India has seriously lagged in this space. The current Narendra Modi government has made infrastructure development as its primary agenda for the country in the coming 10 years. India is rapidly developing its road network, new industrial corridors, ports, metro networks, and others in the hope of helping its booming economy in the coming years. It is true that currently, China is way ahead of its neighbor, but hope is not gone for India after all. India now has the fastest growing economy among large countries and economists suggest that the coming century belongs to India. But everything won't happen just like that. India needs to work on itself. The journey is long and several tasks need to be accomplished. For that, the right policies need to be implemented and the right leadership should be present at the helm. If New Delhi plays its cards right in the coming decades, we can see a new geopolitical power shift in the Asia Pacific.